obviously it's not just a childhood book that evokes positive images, it's also a book that has so-called texts of terror within it. God instructing genocide when he's trying to forward the Israel project, various texts where women are slaughtered and the concubine that is put into little pieces.
Sure.
They're uncomfortable texts, they're not texts that forward kind of positive, liberal agenda, and they're difficult, but they're still there in this canon, this revelation that seems so important. As somebody that studies the Bible, these are texts that I can try and read and say, okay, historically they come from a very different context. Genocide wasn't what God wanted to promote as the outcome of this revelation. It's a particular historical event. There are emotions and that the narrator and the authors are working through, ethnic conflicts, etc. On the gender stuff, it becomes apparent that this is a patriarchal text, again, with very different values. I mean, Paul's epistles that use slavery as a positive image that now we wouldn't kind of go with. In some ways you can kind of historicise it, say, okay, that's from a different era. But for communities of faith, I think that's perhaps not always the ready answer. They have to go back and try and rehabilitate, revise, rethink how these kinds of texts of terror can function today, because they are part of that canon. I suppose it's more easier for someone from a liberal position perhaps to try and deal with those than someone coming from your more evangelical perspective. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I mean, I think there are a number of things to say. I think one of the things is we need to be really careful to distinguish between what the Bible reports and what it condones or sanctions or encourages. And there are some occasions when the Bible simply reports something, but they have been understood as this is what God required, when in fact God might not have required that at all.
Right.
The people just did it.
Right.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Bible is simply reporting what happened rather than saying this is what God requires. I understand that that doesn't get us off the hook with everything, but it is an important thing. The second thing I think is that for me, because Christ is the supreme revelation of the person of God. I mean, the bottom line for me is, what is God like? Who is God like? And coming from my perspective, I want to say the best image that we have of God is the person Jesus. He is the image of Paul, Colossians, he is the image of the invisible God. So if God is like Jesus, then I need to, in a way, I need to get that clear, and then I need to read the rest in the light of that.
Right.
Which the other people didn't have, of course, the people who were involved in that. Some folk find it comparatively easy to say, this is not what these texts of terror and genocide and all this kind of thing, this is not what God required, it's what people thought he required. And in fact they were mistaken. I don't have a great difficulty in saying that, actually, personally. But I know it's not satisfactory for everybody. And I think at the end of the day, we just have to say, there are some things I just don't understand. But what I do understand is that God is like Jesus.
Okay.
And I'm going to hold on to that.
Maybe I could interject and be devil's advocate for a moment. I think that often happens at the kind of triumphalist, warrior kind of God of the Hebrew Bible. It can be kind of discounted somewhat, put to the side and say, but actually, the new revelation and love in Jesus Christ kind of
yes, that's not
that.
Yes, go
on. But the central crux, I suppose, of gospel good news is that a very jarring juxtaposition that God, as atonement theories variously try and sort out, requires his son to die.
Yes. Some
commentators have said that's almost like divine child abuse. You know, it's an equally, you know, why couldn't you ask for a bunch of flowers to trivial? It's a very violent image right at the centre of the gospel, which people reading these kinds of texts can actually find very, very difficult.
Okay.
Do you kind of go on the victimhood of Jesus, that he kind of shares the sufferings?
I mean, I think that the amazing thing about the Passion story for me is that he is not the victim. He is the architect.
Right. Okay.
He designs the whole thing.
Right.
So where has it got to take place? In Jerusalem. When has it got to take place? At Passover. So that's where he goes at that time. And particularly in St John's Gospel, but as you read all the Gospels, you just get that impression that not only did he know what was going to happen, he knew what was going to happen to the degree of almost in planning it. So this had to happen.
Yeah.
Now, for me, that is the mystery of the grace of God.
I think the
before which I simply bow, really.
Yeah. I mean, you said quite rightly that John, I think, makes the cross almost an enthronement of
Absolutely.
He's very kind of set on where this has to happen. But Mark's earliest gospel, you know, you get the cry of dereliction, like, why have you forsaken me? It's a very different kind of death.
Yes.
And early Christianity really had to deal with that problem and think about how it was going to recruit kind of people to what was essentially, you know, a movement around a crucifixion victim, someone that died under state terrorism. So
who follows a crucified man?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal, an unexpected turn. Yeah.
But I think it's not. I don't think the Gospels are recruitment tools.
Right.
Not a pamphlet that's put out in order to get more recruits. I think it's telling the story.
Yeah, but evangelism and
absolutely.
good news.
Yes. But I think there's a world of difference between evangelism and recruitment.
Okay. Yeah.
Evangelism is about bringing a person into a personal encounter with the central character of the story.
Right.
Recruitment's about joining a club.
Right. Okay. So a macronistic kind of terminology.